that's hopefully you've grasped something about what the subject entails, what happens in it. So, ask me any questions you've got about it, anything you're curious about, anything about. I suppose I'll tell you a tiny little bit of detail there. I got out of the organisation, I actually fled the organisation in 2006, and got back here in July 2006. I was hunting, I was chased by them. The people outside my family stands up and carried a line when they realised I'd flown the coop in Birmingham. I had to hide from them. I had to set up a bit of a ruse, making them think that I'd actually gone to Ireland, actually purchased a ticket from the whole bloody lot. So they'd think I'd gone to Ireland, and I actually went out and I lived with a bunch of very interesting characters on the streets of Birmingham for about 3 weeks until I knew the coast was clear. Now the reason for all that, it might sound a bit weird, right? But they actually would have physically kidnapped me back if they could physically have found me, right? One of the reasons that was working, of course, is that I was emotionally, as well as psychologically, very, very, very vulnerable at that point. It takes just a bit of a, it seems that with many people who have escaped, there's a bit of a period there where one recovers his sense of self enough to know that they don't have power over him anymore. And that could be, it's about 3 months to do that, roughly. So I was aware of this because I'm ashamed to admit I participated in such hunts before as a Scientology security person, hunting down people with knowledge. So I knew the whole scope, if you like, you know. Anyway, so I made good my escape, and then I got back here in 2006. Took quite a few months, I suppose, to get my shit together, you might say. Did some work and then finally got to UCC then in 2000. Around the time I wrote this book in 2008. I'd written a couple of articles about my experience and posted them on various online newspapers and so on. They got a lot of interest because at that time the Anonymous Network was just kind of raising their heads, and they latched on to what I'd written a number of articles, and I got thousands of hits, and then I got publishing, that's what the record. There you go. And that was 2008 then when I started university and just finished that thing, and kind of have been a little bit cautious about doing too much on it since then, mainly because I wanted to get through university. That was important to me. That was part of my normalization process. As you can imagine, I was 25 years in the college. I was quite naive when I went in, but by God I was naive when I came out, I must admit. But that process of normalization, UCC was a very good kind of, I suppose it's kind of a, what would we call it, kind of a decompression system, a re-socialization system to get back into the
And what was the moment of clarity that you had to just make you decide to leave? I mean, after 25 years, you must have had a reason to decide to question and take that decision, because not only is it very difficult to break indoctrination, but it's also socially scary. And you have a lot of incentive to, even if you don't fully accept it, to still stay in just to avoid the hassle.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, no, absolutely. I suppose there was two, in fact. There were two major points of realization. First of all, I suppose, to put in context, the system of indoctrination works because it's constantly reinforced, right? You know, by people reading stuff like that covers insanity every day, and you believe it's true. That's it. Also, of course, the social reinforcement, as you mentioned, there at the group. I've been out in Africa, in Zimbabwe. I was a troubleshooter. I used to fly around the world troubleshooting problems in various areas. Problems. We had a lot of trouble in Zimbabwe, and I was flown down there to sort it out. But I did. But in the process of that, Mugabe decided I was a South African agent and put me in prison. And got out of that. We had a good contact. We lived in England, Barclay. who got me out, or got me in his custody, so to speak, right, and then with a court case, and it was very interesting. And got back to England. You can imagine that kind of shook me up. Funny enough, on the plane actually, I was in Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa, how do you say it? And it's the main city of Ethiopia.
Is it Addis Ababa?
Sorry, Addis Ababa. That's it. Addis Ababa. We sort of, I got there, and there was a big stopover there, and there was a guy who was working with the UN, an Irish fellow actually from, I think he was from Kerry. He was, began talking about famine and the relief work he was doing. And it kind of woke me up and said, hang on a second, there's something else going on in the world besides Scientology. There's other people doing good stuff, And that kind of got me thinking. In other words, the Cork bill started going. That was in, when was that? About 90. That could have been 1991, 1992. Subconsciously, I'm sure an awful lot of stuff was happening at that point. Later on, a few years later, I found myself in Bournemouth, and I was sorting out another huge problem with Scientology, which was about probably to close down the corporation. They were being sued successfully, or they had been sued successfully by a person for, I think they were sued for 5 million, and not so much the money, but the political fallout and the media fallout would be massive, because it would have been publicised thing, and it was a big case. And I was sent down there to buy the litigant off. In other words, I won't go into the Scientology finance system, but it's as convoluted as you can imagine, sort of nappy and whatever you want. It's a crazy system. But rather than the multi-billion Church of Scientology giving me a check, going down and finding the person, giving it to the woman, and getting her to disappear, I had to go down and find £1 million and give to this woman to make her disappear. So to find £1 million, it took me 6 months, and it took me 6 excruciating months. It's one of the most excruciating months I've ever had in Scientology. I was living on about, sometimes I was living on £5 a week and sleeping on floors, and yet dealing with hundreds of thousands of pounds coming through my hands, and this kind of stuff. Anyway, that's as nothing as you can imagine. I came back from that, and I was like, oh, no, there's something really wrong here. In that, I'd been exposed to the internet for the first time. You're not allowed to use internet in Scientology, by the way.
Wow.
You're not allowed, you're rarely allowed to use TV, whatever. Newspaper restricted and so on. But I've been down there for 6 months. I've been living with real people. I've been actually directly interfacing with the real world with very little actual direct contact, I suppose, social contact, I suppose, with the cadre I was involved in Scientology management. When I got back, someone had decided that I had been in touch with the anti-Scientology group. Now, Scientology is a paranoid organisation, as you can imagine. It comes down from Hub himself, who's a kind of class paranoia person. Anyway, they decided that I'd obviously been in touch with the enemies of Scientology, and they dragged me into an interrogation session. It took 3 weeks. I was locked in a tower, kept there constantly under armed guard. That's a paranoid deal. And interrogated me intensively, and I just said, fuck this, this is just ridiculous. And I said, that's it, okay, I'm out of here, right? But it wasn't that simple. It took another 5 years to get out of there. Because you're not allowed to do that, basically. Anyone's put on a non-executive, non-profit local post, so looking after vehicles and engines and whatever else. And eventually, after, I suppose, a bit of Machiavellian manoeuvring, I was promoted back up to an high executive level and sent up to Birmingham to sort out finances up there. In the process of doing that, I said, okay, I'm going to release all the place out, and I'm going to actually find out if Scientology works. because obviously it's been 25 years, you know. I believed it worked. I was the first time ever critical of it and thinking about it, you know, cogitating about it. But I said, okay, let's give it a chance. I've done 25 years of this. I'm actually going to really try Scientology in the real world and see if all those massive blown claims that Hubbard makes are valid. During that year or so, there was a big, what's called a big event down in St. Hill, fundraising event actually, and Tom Cruise was there, and John Travolta was there, and Tom Cruise, that was when he made that black turtleneck video. And he stood up on stage and was like all the glory. And then the chairman of the board of Scientology, the supreme dictator of Scientology, stood up on stage, he was standing next to him on stage, said, "This is the greatest Scientologist in the world. There's no person who's stronger, better, more effective, more blah blah anything, right?" I don't think I've years in this job. I've been to prison for these fuckers, you know. I've lived on 5 foot a week, slept on floors with these guys. This is just multi-billionaire star. Excuse me. This multi-billionaire star is the greatest Scientologist. That, excuse me. Anyway, that set some more turning. So I got back up to Birmingham and said, okay, let's take the Scientology thing and let's really work with it. So there's 2005, there was riots in the Roselle's area of Birmingham, right? This was the Muslim and Black Afro-Caribbean community began extremely violent battles, street battles. And the whole, this area near where she lived at was on fire. I said, okay, Scientology got this program called the Volunteer Minister Program. Now, mostly it was promote Scientology, use Scientology stuff. I said, okay, I'm going to go out there as a Scientology volunteer minister on the streets, 48 hours, bam, right? And we'll see what happens, right? So I went out, and I found I was actually going out to myself. And I asked the other, my comrades, my Scientology comrades, my staff comrades, said, listen guys, it's important, we're Scientology, we're volunteer ministers, this is what we're told we're supposed to do, we're supposed to, you know, change the world, so let's go out and do it. No one did. So fine, I went up there myself, yep. Scientology yellow jacket on, you know, so I was out there. Had some very interesting encounters, met Caribbean leaders and met Muslim leaders and dodged burning cars, whatever it was. It was all terribly interesting. I kind of got back and I said, okay, well, let's take another stage. So I began volunteering in a number of organizations. And there's a very effective system that the Home Office in England set up back in the mid-2000s, that's when the Tony Blair's government, which involved empowering voluntary organizations and voluntary groups to, if you like, carry out Labour policies to some degree, the positive social policies, right, in places like Birmingham. And so they were quite, and there was a central coordinating body called the VCS, I think it's called. I said, okay, here's the strategy, right? I'm going to make Scientology from this little fringe group that people think is weird, because I discovered people thought it was weird at that point. And I'm going to make it very acceptable. So I went in and started volunteering in various organizations. Sometimes people knew I was a Scientologist, and a number of them, I made sure they had no idea about anything to do with Scientology whatsoever, right? The ones I wanted them to know, the ones I needed, like youth groups, Muslim youth groups, Kashmiri Muslims. I said, look, we're Scientologists. I'm going to put this stuff here to help guys study, but this stuff here to help them, you know, work better with society and whatever else we had. And in that capacity, went up and met the local head of education authorities and met MPs and all kinds of stuff on that thing. In other programs, I worked with Aston Villa Football Club. They ran a fantastic program called Playing for Success, which is a really clever program. Takes kids who are doing badly in school, you put them in intensive little fun study groups, you know, with computers and also in learning games. You're learning English, learning computer skills, learning mathematics, and it's all kind of games thing. And it's set up, and you'd be asking Villa grant, stadium rooms. Kids would go, yeah, we're out there doing this stuff, And I worked with them for quite a while, and it was fascinating actually. I must admit, I didn't know Scientology. I never told them anything of Scientology. It was, it's kind of very smart guy who kind of what things that it's important I'll do. So bang it down there twice a week, working with kids.